Did you know that over 250,000 people in the UK are homeless or at risk of homelessness? That's 1 in every 200 people. But here's the real shocker. Most of us don't even notice. You might pass by someone sleeping on the streets and think, that's not my problem. But in reality, homelessness is an epidemic silently affecting every corner of the UK. It's a crisis that's been building up for years, and yet we continue to ignore it. Why is homelessness still skyrocketing in one of the richest countries in the world? Why are people left to sleep in doorways while vacant buildings and luxury flats sit empty? And why aren't we doing more to help? This isn't just about the people you see on the streets, it's about families, children, and even young people who are trapped in temporary shelters, couch surfing from one place to the next, unsure of where they'll sleep tomorrow. What's going wrong? Is it bad policies, society's indifference, or could it be something even deeper that we're overlooking? Stick around as we uncover 10 shocking reasons why homelessness is still an epidemic in the UK and why it's not getting the attention it deserves. Trust me, you'll be surprised at what's really going on behind the scenes. You won't believe how we're all contributing to this ongoing disaster. Keep watching, you don't want to miss this. Number 1. Lack of affordable housing. Let's start with the biggest factor driving homelessness in the UK, the severe lack of affordable housing. The housing market is in crisis, and it's not hard to see why. House prices have skyrocketed, making it impossible for many people to afford a home, especially for those on low or middle incomes. In fact, house prices have nearly doubled over the last 2 decades, while wages have barely kept up. Imagine this: a young couple, both working full-time, yet still struggling to find a place they can afford, or a family with children forced to make impossible decisions between paying rent and buying groceries. With rental prices soaring and few affordable options available, many are simply being priced out of their own cities. But it's not just the price of houses that's the problem, it's the shortage. The UK isn't building enough new homes, especially social housing. Experts argue that the country needs hundreds of thousands of new homes every year, but construction is way behind. Meanwhile, developers often focus on building luxury flats and expensive properties that only the wealthy can afford, completely ignoring the needs of the most vulnerable. This lack of affordable housing isn't just a numbers issue. It has real-life consequences. It's leaving people stuck in overcrowded conditions, on waiting lists for years, or forced into temporary shelters. It also means families are more likely to experience homelessness as they struggle to find a stable place to live. It's hard to escape this crisis. Without enough affordable homes to go around, many are left with no choice but to sleep on the streets or rely on emergency shelters, if they're lucky. The lack of affordable housing is a ticking time bomb, and its effects are felt every day by those who are most vulnerable in society. Number 2. Mental health and addiction. One of the most overlooked reasons for homelessness in the UK is the link between homelessness and mental health or addiction. It's a vicious cycle. Mental health struggles and substance abuse can lead people to the streets, but living on the streets can also worsen mental health and make it even harder to break free from addiction. Studies have shown that a significant percentage of the homeless population suffers from conditions like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. These mental health issues can make it incredibly difficult to maintain steady work, manage relationships, or even seek help from social services. When you add the pressure of not having a stable home, the stress can become overwhelming. Substance abuse is another major factor. Alcohol and drugs often become coping mechanisms for those facing the trauma of homelessness. For some, addiction started before they lost their home, while for others, it began as a way to escape the harsh realities of life on the streets. The real issue is that mental health services and addiction treatment aren't always easily accessible to those who need them most. Despite the growing awareness of mental health issues, the support available for the homeless is often insufficient. Shelters may offer a roof over their heads, but they often lack the resources or trained staff to properly address the underlying mental health and addiction problems. Imagine the frustration of trying to rebuild your life when you're battling invisible struggles like depression or addiction with little to no help. Without proper mental health and addiction support, the path out of homelessness becomes even more difficult. People aren't just fighting to survive, they're fighting a system that doesn't support their healing. And until these issues are properly addressed, homelessness will remain an unsolved crisis. Number 3. Government policies and funding cuts. When we look at the persistent homelessness crisis in the UK, government policies and funding cuts play a crucial role in why the problem keeps worsening. Over the past decade, austerity measures and deep cuts to essential public services have hit vulnerable populations the hardest, especially those facing homelessness. The reduction in funding for social housing, mental health services, and homelessness prevention programs has left thousands of people without the safety net they desperately need. For instance, government spending on affordable housing has plummeted, leaving fewer homes available for those in need. As a result, people who are already struggling to make ends meet are finding themselves on the streets with little support. Welfare cuts, particularly to universal credit and other benefits, have also compounded the issue. Many people at risk of homelessness rely on these financial supports to stay afloat, but the cuts have left many unable to cover basic living costs like rent. Housing benefit reductions have made it even harder for low-income individuals and families to find stable accommodation, often forcing them to choose between paying rent and covering essential expenses like food and utilities. But it's not just the lack of financial support, it's also about the failure to invest in long-term solutions. Too often, the focus is on temporary measures like emergency shelters instead of creating permanent housing solutions. This short-term thinking only keeps people trapped in the cycle of homelessness rather than helping them rebuild their lives. Government inaction and lack of support don't just leave people homeless, they perpetuate the problem. Until real, meaningful investment in affordable housing and social support systems is made, the UK will continue to face a growing homelessness epidemic. The question remains, how long will we allow this to continue? Number 4. The role of private landlords. While the government and social services play a significant part in addressing homelessness, private landlords also play a critical, though often overlooked, role in this crisis. In recent years, private rental markets have become increasingly unaffordable and exclusive, making it even harder for low-income individuals and families to find a place to call home. The truth is, many private landlords are more focused on profit than providing affordable housing. With the rise of short-term rentals like those found on Airbnb and the steady demand for rental properties in urban areas, private landlords have been able to raise rents to levels that are simply unattainable for those with limited incomes. In some cities, rents have outpaced wages by such a margin that many people spend over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. For those already struggling, this leaves them with little to no financial cushion, and the risk of homelessness becomes all too real. Additionally, many private landlords prefer to rent to tenants who can pay higher prices or those who are more stable, leaving individuals with lower incomes or those on housing benefits with limited options. In some cases, discrimination against tenants with poor credit scores or those receiving government assistance further narrows the pool of available homes. The reality is, vulnerable tenants are often forced to accept substandard housing, often with unfit living conditions or unethical landlord practices. What's more, the lack of long-term stability in private rentals is a huge issue. With landlords often raising rent or choosing to sell properties, tenants can be forced out of their homes at short notice, with nowhere to go. For many, this means being pushed out onto the streets or into temporary accommodations, making the situation even worse. The rising influence of private landlords in the housing market isn't just driving up rents, it's directly contributing to homelessness. Without proper regulation or incentives for landlords to offer affordable and stable housing, we're leaving more and more people behind. Number 5. The hidden homeless. When we think about homelessness, many of us picture people sleeping on the streets, but the reality is far more complex. Hidden homelessness refers to the individuals and families who are living in temporary accommodations, couch surfing, or staying with friends or relatives because they have nowhere else to go. These people are often invisible, as they don't fit the stereotypical image of homelessness. In the UK, the numbers are staggering. According to recent reports, around 130,000 people are living in temporary housing or sofa surfing at any given time. These individuals might not be visible on the streets, but they are just as much at risk of homelessness as those sleeping rough. Without a stable, permanent place to live, they constantly face the stress of uncertainty and insecurity. The reasons for hidden homelessness are varied, but often stem from financial difficulties, family breakdowns, or Unforeseen life events like job loss or illness. Once someone falls into this hidden state, they may feel too ashamed or embarrassed to seek help, further isolating themselves from services or support networks. The feeling of constantly having to rely on others for shelter can take a toll on both mental and physical health, creating a cycle that's hard to escape. Additionally, the lack of support for hidden homelessness makes it even more challenging to address. Unlike those sleeping rough, people in temporary or unstable living conditions often don't have access to services like shelters, mental health support, or food assistance. They may not be included in official homelessness statistics, which means their plight is often overlooked. Hidden homelessness is a ticking time bomb. As people bounce from one temporary arrangement to another, the likelihood of falling into full-blown homelessness increases. Until we start recognizing and supporting these individuals, we're missing a significant piece of the puzzle in tackling the homelessness crisis. If you found this video eye-opening, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think is the most overlooked cause of homelessness? Don't forget, we put a lot of effort into creating these videos, so hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 6. The lack of support systems for youth. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of the UK's homelessness crisis is the increasing number of young people who find themselves without a home. Youth homelessness is a hidden epidemic, affecting thousands of young people who have been let down by the system or forced to leave home due to difficult family situations. Whether it's a broken home, abuse, or simply not being able to cope with life's pressures, many young people face a devastating reality where the support systems they desperately need are just not there. In the UK, young people who leave care or who are 16 or 17 years old often find themselves caught in a legal and social limbo. They're too young to legally rent an apartment or access financial support, yet they're too old to stay in foster care or supported housing. This gap leaves them vulnerable, and many end up living on the streets or in temporary shelters, struggling to survive without the support they need to thrive. The lack of proper mental health services and life skills training for these young people is another major issue. Without access to counseling, education, or training, they're left ill-prepared for adulthood and face significant challenges in finding stable work or housing. The lack of a safety net can push them into cycles of poverty and homelessness as they struggle to cope with the pressures of daily life. What's worse, young people in this situation are often invisible. They don't always have access to the same services as older homeless individuals, leaving them even more isolated. This is a group we can't afford to overlook. If we truly want to break the cycle of homelessness, we need to invest in creating stronger, more comprehensive support systems for vulnerable youth. Only then can we give these young people a chance to build a future. Number 7. The social stigma around homelessness. One of the most insidious factors contributing to homelessness in the UK is the social stigma that surrounds it. The truth is, homelessness is often met with judgment and disdain, which not only isolates people but also prevents them from accessing the help and support they need. Instead of seeing homelessness as a systemic issue, society often views it as a personal failure or a result of poor choices. This kind of thinking is not only unfair, but it also perpetuates the problem. When people think of homelessness, they often picture someone addicted to substances or living on the streets because of their own mistakes. While mental health issues and addiction can play a role, it's important to recognize that homelessness can happen to anyone. Job loss, family breakdowns, and even rising housing costs can all push someone into a situation where they lose their home. The truth is, many homeless individuals are not choosing this lifestyle. They are simply victims of circumstance. The stigma makes it harder for homeless people to seek help. Many are embarrassed to approach shelters or social services for fear of being judged, further pushing them into isolation. This also means they are less likely to engage with support systems or try to improve their situation. In fact, studies show that many homeless individuals prefer to remain on the streets or live in temporary conditions rather than risk being judged or rejected at shelters. To truly solve the homelessness crisis, we must challenge these social stereotypes. Homelessness is not a choice, it's a crisis, and it's time we start seeing the people affected by it with compassion and understanding. Until we shift our perspective and provide support without judgment, homelessness will continue to haunt our society. Number 8. The impact of Brexit. The effects of Brexit are still unfolding, and one of the areas that has been deeply impacted is the housing market and homelessness in the UK. While much of the attention has been focused on the economic uncertainty and political upheaval following the referendum, its influence on homelessness is just as profound, though often overlooked. For many individuals, particularly those from EU countries, the consequences have been immediate and severe. One of the most significant effects has been the uncertainty over immigration status. Many EU nationals who were living and working in the UK before Brexit now face increased difficulties in securing housing or employment. As the rules around benefits and housing assistance have changed, vulnerable migrants, many of whom were already living on the edge, are now at greater risk of losing their homes or being unable to secure stable housing. Brexit has also contributed to economic instability, which has exacerbated the affordability crisis in the housing market. The weakened pound, rising inflation, and job insecurity have led to increased housing costs, making it even harder for low-income individuals to afford rent or buy homes. As property prices continue to rise, wages have stagnated, pushing even more people into financial hardship. Furthermore, Brexit has led to a shortage of workers in key sectors like agriculture, hospitality, and construction, which many vulnerable people rely on for jobs. The lack of workers in these industries means lower wages and fewer job opportunities for those already at the bottom of the employment ladder, increasing their risk of homelessness. In short, Brexit has added another layer of complexity to the homelessness crisis in the UK. It has created a perfect storm of economic instability, uncertain legal status, and rising costs, pushing more people into poverty and homelessness. As we continue to grapple with the fallout from Brexit, it's clear that its impact on housing and homelessness will be felt for years to come. Number 9. Insufficient shelters and emergency housing. When we talk about homelessness, it's easy to assume that shelters and emergency housing are the solution. However, the reality is much darker. Insufficient shelters and overcrowded emergency housing are major barriers to ending homelessness in the UK. While shelters may offer a temporary roof over someone's head, they often fall short in addressing the long-term needs of the homeless population. One of the biggest issues is that there simply aren't enough shelters to meet the demand. Thousands of people are left with no option but to sleep on the streets, as emergency accommodation is often full or inadequate. According to reports, many shelters are at capacity, especially during the colder months when the number of people seeking refuge increases. In some areas, people are turned away because there isn't enough space, leaving them to sleep in doorways or parks. Even when people do find a shelter, the conditions can be harsh. Overcrowding, poor hygiene, and a lack of privacy make shelters a less than ideal option for those already struggling. Many people report feeling unsafe in shelters, with issues of violence or drug use making it difficult to recover from the trauma of homelessness. For some, shelters only offer a temporary escape, not a real solution to the underlying problems of housing instability. Moreover, shelters don't always provide the support services needed to help individuals rebuild their lives. Without access to mental health care, job training, or addiction support, many people find themselves trapped in a cycle of temporary accommodation with no way out. Emergency housing isn't just about providing a roof, it's about providing the comprehensive support needed to help people regain their independence and stability. The lack of sufficient long-term solutions in shelters means that homelessness is rarely solved, it's only postponed. Until the UK invests in more permanent housing and support services, the homeless crisis will continue to grow. Number 10. The cycle of poverty and homelessness. One of the most difficult aspects of homelessness in the UK is the vicious cycle that keeps individuals trapped in a state of poverty and instability. Once someone becomes homeless, it's incredibly hard to break free. Without a stable home, it becomes nearly impossible to access the services, support, or opportunities needed to rebuild a life. This cycle of poverty and homelessness is a major driver of the ongoing crisis. Without a permanent address, many homeless people struggle to find work. Jobs require an address for paychecks and benefits, and employers often see homelessness as a red flag, assuming individuals are unreliable or transient. This makes it nearly impossible to secure long-term employment. Low wages, lack of opportunities, and the need to accept any job that comes along means that homeless individuals often find themselves stuck in low-paying, unstable jobs, further exacerbating their poverty. At the same time, being homeless means individuals have limited access to critical resources like healthcare, mental health support, and education. Without access to these basic needs, it's hard to improve one's situation or even maintain physical and mental health. For example, individuals experiencing homelessness are far more likely to suffer from chronic health conditions, which can further hinder their ability to work or secure housing. Even those who do manage to get back on their feet face a significant barrier: housing affordability. The high cost of rent, combined with a lack of affordable housing, often forces people back into temporary accommodations or shelters, restarting the cycle. Homelessness isn't just about losing a home, it's about the compounding effects that push people into deeper poverty and greater instability. Breaking the cycle requires more than just emergency shelters or temporary fixes. It demands long-term solutions that address the root causes of homelessness, including accessible housing, healthcare, job opportunities, and support systems. Until these systemic issues are tackled, the cycle of poverty and homelessness will continue to trap millions in its grip. Homelessness in the UK is not just a personal tragedy, it's a national crisis, driven by a complex web of economic, social, and political factors. From the lack of affordable housing to the impact of mental health, addiction, and government policies, the reasons behind homelessness are as varied as they are deep-rooted. Hidden homelessness, the rising influence of private landlords, and the stigma surrounding those who experience it only add to the challenge. What's clear is that ignoring the issue is no longer an option. To end the homelessness epidemic, we need a comprehensive approach that includes not just emergency shelter, but also permanent housing, support systems, and effective policies. The UK cannot continue to turn a blind eye to this growing crisis. It's time for a societal shift. We must begin to see homelessness for what it truly is, a systemic issue that requires collective action. It's not just about providing a roof over someone's head, it's about ensuring everyone has the opportunity to live with dignity, security, and hope. If we take action now, we can break the cycle of homelessness and build a future where no one is left behind. The question is, are we willing to act? Thanks for sticking with us through this important discussion. We want to hear from you. What do you think is the most urgent action needed to solve homelessness in the UK? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to watch our previous video for more eye-opening insights. We put a lot of effort into creating these videos to raise awareness, so please subscribe. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Your support keeps us going.